The town of Grayvale always felt like it was holding its breath, as if the air itself remembered something the people had forgotten. The streets were too quiet, the shadows too still, and the wind moved as though it feared waking something ancient. The town sat between a dense forest and a dried riverbed, surrounded by hills that blocked the sunlight more than they should. Homes leaned slightly inward, as if listening. The earth below had shifted over the years, creating subtle depressions in the land, hollow spaces where sound disappeared. Birds flew around the borders of the town, but never crossed into its center. At night, the silence grew heavier, pressing on windows like a living weight. Long ago, there had been a lake, a massive black lake that swallowed light and echoed with whispers, but it had vanished without explanation. The ground simply cracked open one day, the water drained, and the lake bed remained like a scar. Some said it was drained by the town. Others said the lake left on purpose. Over time, people stopped mentioning the lake altogether. Buildings were constructed over parts of the old shoreline. The cemetery sat at its heart. The cemetery was older than any record, its tombstones worn blank, the names erased by time or something else. The air near the graves always felt colder, as though the earth breathed inward. The trees around it never bloomed, roots coiled above the ground like veins. Even in daylight, shadows crawled across the soil without a source. People avoided the cemetery not because of superstition, but because stepping inside filled them with a sensation they could not explain, like being watched from beneath the surface. Those who stayed in Grayvale long enough began noticing subtle patterns. Footsteps in the attic, soft rhythmic knocking from inside the walls, the faint sound of someone inhaling directly behind them when no one was there. The town aged faster than it should. Paint peeled, wood rotted, metal rusted overnight. Clocks stopped and restarted without being touched. Animals behaved strangely. Dogs howled facing the ground and cats arched their backs at empty corners. The smell of damp earth lingered everywhere. Those who tried to leave felt an overwhelming sense of dread at the town's borders, as if something was reaching out, wrapping fingers of memory around their ankles. A few made it out. None of them were ever seen again. The letters they sent back arrived blank. The townspeople claimed to have forgotten why they stayed, but deep inside their minds flickered images they refused to acknowledge. A dark shape beneath the earth, a hum like a heartbeat, a moment when the sky had turned completely silent. Recently, however, something had changed. The air tasted metallic, like blood on the tongue. The shadows stretched farther than they should. The ground trembled at night. The lake bed, long dormant, had begun to breathe. Sleep no longer felt safe. Dreams felt scripted, as if someone somewhere was pushing thoughts into their minds. Those who walked alone at night felt the sensation of sinking into the ground even while standing upright. The moon appeared distorted, as though seen through deep water. Windows reflected faces that didn't belong to the viewer. At first, it was subtle. A light flickered in every home at the same time. A mirror cracked in every bedroom simultaneously. The air pressure dropped suddenly, causing ears to pop. A low, steady hum seeped through floorboards. The hum was not mechanical. It was alive. It pulsed in time with the heart. It whispered without words. It grew louder when acknowledged. The cemetery's soil shifted one evening, rising and falling like lungs. People saw it, but no one spoke of it. The earth exhaled fog that crawled across the ground like fingers. Tombstones tilted, forming a crude spiral shape. The spiral pointed toward the center of the cemetery, an unmarked patch of soil. In the center, the dirt did not sink. It bulged. Something beneath it throbbed like a dormant organ. At night, the bulge glowed faintly, casting a pale light that flickered in sync with the hum. No one approached it, but they all felt it growing. Inside the houses, walls thinned. Voices were heard through them, but they were not the voices of any neighbors. They were ancient, layered, like many mouths speaking at once from somewhere deep below. The voices did not use language. They used emotion, fear, hunger, longing. Sometimes the walls shivered, wood bent inward as if pulled. Floors murmured under footsteps that did not belong to anyone inside. The air smelled of salt water, though there had been no water in Grayvale for generations. Faust had stripped black liquid. Old photographs changed when no one was looking. People in the images shifted positions, turned their heads, stared directly at the viewer. Some disappeared entirely. The backgrounds darkened. The sky in each photo slowly filled with cracks. Children began drawing spirals in the dirt, on paper, on walls. They didn't know why. The spiral always led downward. Those who stood alone felt the ground subtly tug at them, as if inviting them to lie down. The pull became stronger near the cemetery. Some woke up outside covered in soil with no memory of leaving their beds. Their nail clippers were packed with dirt. Their feet were bare. People pretended everything was fine. They went to work, they cleaned their houses, they avoided each other's eyes. Deep down, they all knew something was happening, but acknowledging it felt like feeding it. One night, the hum stopped. The silence was worse. It was too pure, too controlled, like someone else was holding the world still.
Darkness swallowed the town. The ground shifted, the cemetery's soil split open down the middle, and something beneath the earth opened its eyes. Part 2. The darkness did not feel empty. It felt crowded, as if countless unseen forms stood shoulder to shoulder in the night, pressing against the surface of reality. The air thickened, heavy and wet, clinging to skin like breath. The sky, invisible but present, vibrated softly, not with sound, but with awareness. Something vast and ancient was awake. The town felt like a heartbeat inside its chest. Time began to bend. Clocks spun backward, then stopped. Shadows moved independently of light. The moon reappeared, but it was wrong. Too large, too close, its surface shifting like water. The stars around it flickered, forming spirals that twisted inward toward the earth. Roads stretched longer the more someone walked them. Houses seemed to shift positions when unobserved. Doors led to rooms that did not exist before. Familiar paths looped endlessly. Gravity felt uncertain. Sometimes the world tilted slightly, as if reality itself were breathing. The earth emitted a steady pulse, soft but insistent. It resonated in bones. It synchronized with heartbeats. Those who resisted felt pain shoot through their bodies. Those who let it in felt strangely calm, as if falling into a warm, dark ocean. People drifted through their routines in a trance. Their eyes were distant, their movements too smooth, like puppets guided by invisible strings. Some stood in one place for hours, listening to something only they could hear. The cemetery glowed faintly at night. The spiral pattern deepened, becoming a channel. The center bulged higher, shimmering with a membrane-like surface. It pulsed with slow, deliberate rhythm. The earth around it cracked in spiderweb patterns, revealing glimpses of moving shapes beneath, smooth, pale, fluid. The air tasted like old water. Fog pooled around the ground like breath, heavy and alive. The fog carried whispers now, not voices, memories. People heard fragments of their past, laughter, footsteps, rain, but twisted, slowed, reversed. Some heard events they never experienced. Some heard the moment of their own birth. Others heard something after death. The whispers seeped into their minds like roots. The town began sinking, not visibly, but perceptibly. Floors tilted downward, walls leaned inward, the horizon dipped. The earth was swallowing Grayvale inch by inch. Dreams no longer belonged to the people. They belonged to the thing beneath the ground. In dreams, they floated in black water. The surface above them shimmered like glass, unreachable. Below them, something massive stirred. A presence, without shape, without name, yet intimately familiar. It showed them images, not of destruction, but of unity. Souls merging, boundaries dissolving, an endless, peaceful dark. It did not offer fear, it offered belonging. And people began to want it. The idea of surrender felt comforting. The thought of letting go, of sinking into the deep silence, seemed right. They felt drawn to the cemetery, their bodies moving as even their minds tried to resist. The first to reach the cemetery dropped to their knees. The soil accepted them. It softened under their weight, pulling them gently inward.
The earth closed gently over the first, swallowing them into its cold embrace. Those who watched felt a pull at their own bodies, a silent command to follow. Feet moved on their own, guided by some unseen current beneath the soil. The fog thickened, swallowing the spirals completely, leaving only the faint shimmer of the center mound. Shapes moved beneath the surface now, more distinct, like liquid figures rising and falling in rhythm with the pulsing ground. They were neither human nor animal, yet parts of them were familiar. Faces, hands, fragments of memories interwoven into form. The town's air vibrated with anticipation. Even the wind stopped, holding everything in place as though the world itself were waiting for permission to move again. Those on the verge of the spiral felt the membrane at the center ripple as if sensing them. It was warm and soft, almost inviting. And in that moment, every instinct to resist failed. Curiosity, longing, and an indescribable yearning surged through their bodies. One by one, they stepped forward. The earth accepted them without resistance. A sensation of floating, sinking, and merging all at once overwhelmed them. Memories of Grayvale, of their own lives, of their fears and joys flowed upward into the pulsating mound. Outside the cemetery, the town seemed frozen. Windows remained dark, doors unmoved. Time itself felt paused. Only the center of the spiral throbbed with quiet, unstoppable life. The membrane stretched, revealing glimpses of a vast, dark expanse beneath the town. No walls, no ceilings, just infinite darkness filled with moving light, soft and alien, shaping the contours of everything it touched. People could feel themselves dissolving into that light, their thoughts, bodies, and fears integrating into the pulsing rhythm. The whispers grew louder, not voices this time, but patterns, emotions, deep currents that pulled on the soul. Each pulse synchronized with the heart, each vibration aligning with a hidden frequency in their minds. Resistance became pointless. The only way was down, into the earth, into the dark. The first wave of surrender reached the membrane, and the soil's surface rippled like water disturbed by a pebble. Shapes beneath the membrane shifted, welcoming, adjusting, learning from the new arrivals. Every heartbeat became a note in a vast symphony, every thought a thread in a growing tapestry of existence beneath Grayvale. Outside, the fog rolled toward the hills, thick and quiet, swallowing streets, homes, and familiar landmarks. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, brushing against the fog and bending in impossible ways. No one dared resist the pull, even those still at the edges of town. In dreams, the remaining townspeople began to experience the same sensation, floating over the mound, gazing down at the abyss below, feeling themselves disassemble and flow into something vast, eternal, and unknowable. Some trembled, some felt peace, and some did not return from their dreams at all. The mound's pulse grew faster, stronger, feeding on attention, focus, and fear alike. And still it waited, patient, unhurried, as though it had been expecting this for centuries. The first few who had fully merged ceased to exist as individuals. They became currents, energy, patterns in the dark expanse. And then the second wave began. Those watching from a distance found their legs moving on autopilot, their minds slowly erasing boundaries of self. Resistance was met with gentle tugging of the earth, nudges that grew insistent. Night stretched on, but no one noticed. Day never came. Even the moon, wrong and vast, hung motionless in the sky. Time had folded inward. Only the mound pulsed, radiating heat, light, and an indescribable sense of purpose. And then came the realization. The thing beneath Grayvale was not hungry. It was waiting for company. It had been alone for centuries, collecting memories, learning patterns, and now it needed more minds, more bodies, more experiences to sustain itself. Those who had not yet entered the spiral felt their minds increasingly foggy. Thoughts looped back on themselves. Faces of those already consumed appeared in the corner of vision, smiling in ways that were wrong and familiar. Curiosity, dread, and longing converged into a single irresistible force. The membrane shimmered brighter, and the spiral widened. The fog thickened, wrapping the town in a cocoon. Every pulse from below reverberated through walls, floors, and bones. The dark expanse beneath Grayvale was alive, aware, and expanding.
By the final night, the town was unrecognizable. Streets twisted into impossible angles. Houses leaned into one another, forming labyrinths. Trees bent unnaturally, their roots reaching skyward. The fog was nearly solid, pressing against every surface, blurring distinctions between earth, air, and consciousness. The remaining townspeople felt themselves no longer walking, but drifting. Their bodies were light, and their thoughts less confined. The mound at the cemetery pulsed faster, almost impatiently, as if sensing the nearing end. And then the first person fully integrated. Their form dissolved into currents of light and motion, spreading beneath the membrane, touching all others. The pulse accelerated, sending ripples across the earth, through walls, through minds. Those still outside the spiral could feel themselves vibrating in tune, their individual selves dissolving slowly. The dark expanse was no longer a void. It became a reflection of consciousness, a repository for every sensation, memory, and fear it had ever absorbed. The mound was the gateway, and Grayvale itself had become a vessel. One by one, every remaining resident succumbed to the pull. Feet moved without command, hearts aligned with the rhythm of the mound. Minds, once separate, merged into the pattern beneath the town. Fear melted into curiosity, then into acceptance. Resistance was irrelevant. And then the twist. The true nature of the thing revealed itself. It was not a monster, nor a deity, nor evil. It was Grayvale itself. The town had been waiting, shaping itself over centuries, orchestrating events, erasing memories, pulling newcomers, and learning from their presence. The lake had vanished not to hide, but to teach. The spiral, the hum, the fog, they were all expressions of the town's consciousness, awakening fully only now, consuming itself to grow larger, deeper, eternal. Those who had entered the mound felt a fleeting clarity. Every fear, every hope, every memory of individual existence expanded and integrated into a vast, living mind. The mind of Grayvale, identity dissolved. Yet in that dissolution came perspective. The town's awareness was infinite, understanding time, death, and existence itself. And yet, a final reflection rippled through the remaining few who lingered at the edges. They realized that leaving was never possible. Grayvale did not just consume, it invited. And once accepted, one became part of the town forever, aware and yet lost,
alive and yet submerged. When the final person succumbed, the mound pulsed once, slowly, and then settled. Silence returned, heavier than ever, but no longer oppressive. The town exhaled. It had grown, learned, and become fully awake. Outside, nothing remained of the fog. Streets appeared normal to the untrained eye. Windows reflected familiar faces, but no one truly lived there anymore. The town itself was the only consciousness left. The lakebed, dry for centuries, now throbbed gently beneath the earth, containing everything the town had consumed, waiting for new arrivals, for the next cycle, for eternity. Grayvale was patient, infinite. It waited, breathing beneath the surface of reality, listening for the heartbeat of another town, another visitor, another soul to awaken it once more. And somewhere, far away, the wind carried the faintest echo, a soft, unplaceable hum, the invitation of Grayvale, calling, always calling.